edition, we pose the question, to count or not to count? Preview the World Boxing Organization heavyweight title fight between Francesco Damiani and Pierre Coetzer. Discuss the future of South African boxing with the new chairman of the National Control Board. And discover the real reason for the rise and fall of boxing in New York.
Welcome to the world of boxing. And what an exciting world it has been in the last few weeks. We've had good news about the future of the sport in this country, a double knockout in East London, the upset of the century in Tokyo, and some rather undignified egg dancing by two of the world's so-called controlling bodies, as public opinion forced them to come to terms with the unthinkable, the defeat of Mike Tyson. And Deon, I don't think anyone in boxing could have asked for more excitement than that.
Jy dood reg, Bert, uit oogpunt van boks 'n aangename maand gewees, maar nie net as gevolg daarvan nie, ook ander dinge wat gebeur het. Wie sou byvoorbeeld ooit kon dink dat Buster Douglas vir Mike Tyson sou klop, behalwe hy self? Die wedpryse van Las Vegas se beroepswedders was so hoog soos 35-1 dat Mike Tyson nie sou verloor nie, en hulle het nogal 'n sekere kundigheid wat die sake betref. Boks bly definitief 'n baie onvoorspelbare sport.
Tell me about it. I've been wrong so often it hurts. But I don't think anyone should blame Douglas for the referee's blunder when he allegedly gave the challenger a long count in the 8th round. Although in an effort to save face, it seems that Mike Tyson and Don King both did. What everyone seems to have conveniently forgotten is the referee is always right, even when he's wrong. It matters not whether you check the London prize ring rules, the Queensberry rules, or the rules and regulations of the four so-called world controlling bodies. All stipulate that the only man with absolute authority in the ring is the referee. And besides, when Greg Page knocked out Pierre Coetzer in 1984, during what should have been the minute's rest period between the 8th and 9th rounds, nobody thought of ordering a rematch. The trouble with boxing is that there is still a lack of conformity in the application of the rules. What applies in New York may not apply in Tokyo or London or Johannesburg.
As a timekeeper, we wait for the fight to start. The referee instructs us as to start. We give the seconds out clearing, and we sound the gong for the first round. During the fight, if there is a stoppage, the referee will give us the sign stop. We stop the clock until the referee gives us the instruction to carry on. Then we start the clock again, and the fight carries on. At the end of the round, we sound the gong for the rest duration. 5 seconds, 6 seconds before the start of the next round, we blow our whistle, give the seconds out ruling, and then sound the gong for the next round. And that's how it goes on round after round.
My experiences in my travels abroad, in the championship fights that I've refereed in the various countries, has been as follows. Before I did in Japan in particular, I had a meeting with the official timekeeper and the commissioner present with an interpreter. And I made it very clear that the method that I would use in counting over a fallen boxer would be as follows, that in the event of the boxer going down, I would immediately shout stop and audibly announce the second as it motions with a downward motion of my arm. And all he has to do is get up there and effectively signal to me each second of the interval. I am in charge of the count, and the referee count is official. So that's all he has to do. And that also gives rise, for example, like the Taylor-Naya fight, when that certain critics felt that I should have disqualified Taylor in one case, and in the other case, Naya came out of the corner. What happens there, the referee is in command of the count, so he can suspend the count at any time, interrupt the count, and then continue. And this is where the confusion reigns in certain parts of the world, where the timekeeper takes over the count, and he starts, the referee has to pick it up from him. That I don't like. That practice I don't think is the correct policy.
At this point, perhaps it's worth remembering that the first real change in the manner in which a referee called out the count came in 1927. It was agreed before the second fight between Jack Dempsey and Gene Tunney for the heavyweight championship of the world that the referee would only start counting once the man scoring the knockdown had gone to a neutral corner. But this is what happened in the excitement of the moment.
$1 million for 40 minutes work. The fight itself follows a pattern similar to the first match, and seconds have actually elapsed. He is looking at the referee and picks up the numbers. You be the judge.
Because of the public outcry following the Dempsey-Tunney fight, the Americans decided that in future the referee would pick up the count from the knockdown timekeeper. But even this procedure has often proved unsatisfactory. Surprised to learn that the British regulations also call for the timekeeper to take up the count as soon as the boxer goes down. Just how confusing this can be for a fallen fighter was there for all to see when Glenn McCrory dropped Cesar Macatini in the 11th round of the IBF World Cruiserweight title fight.
Give you the example, Cesar Macatini in England against Glenn McCrory. Now, he went down amidst an uproar, 4,000 Yorkshiremen going wild. You couldn't hear the referee counting, and Cesar couldn't see the fingers because the chap had this new glove on, Rudy Battle. And I brought up the question with Battle afterwards. I had a talk to him. He took up the count at 5. Now, Cesar is accustomed to the local ranks where the referee counts from 1. Now, I'm sure in his own mind he thought the referee was counting from 1. It got to what appeared to be 6 to him, and he was counted out. He might not have got up, he might have got up and still been beaten by McCrory, who I think was getting the better of it at that stage. But that isn't the point in argument. The point in argument is that the referee is the man who has full control. He should count from 1, and it should go all the way through. And he will only start the count when he is satisfied that the standing up fighter is in the neutral corner and the down fighter can then be counted over.
Nobody disputes that Buster Douglas got a long count in the 8th round of his fight with Mike Tyson. But few seem to be aware that Tyson himself was on the canvas for more than 11 seconds before referee Octavia Marianne spread his arms to declare him out in the 10th round. It makes you think, doesn't it?
Dis waarom te sê dat Pierre Coetzer se voorbereiding vir sy wêreldboksorganisasie swaargewig titelgeveg teen Francesco Damiani in Milaan op 24 Maart meer as 'n jaar gelede begin het, toe Coetzer vir James Pritchard in die 8ste ronde in Johannesburg uitgeslaan het. Coetzer het net 2 keer daarna geveg, toe hy Michael Greer na 6 rondes uitgeslaan het en Bobby Heats in die 1ste ronde. Geduld het egter nou vrugte afgewerp vir die man van Pretoria. Die Heats-geveg in San Juan was bedoel as opwarmingsgeveg voor die een teen Damiani, maar onderhandelinge het skibreek gelei en Coetzer moes 7 maande in plaas van 3 wag. Alan Tuwil beplan sy gevegte soos 'n generaal van ouds. Hy het reeds lank voor Coetzer in Puerto Rico aangekom het vir sy geveg teen Bobby Heats, ellenlange verslae van Heats self gehad. Sedertdien het hy natuurlik dieselfde informasie oor Damiani ingewin. Tuwil weet alles van die Italianer se aggressiewe styl, sy klipharde ken en die vinnige handspoed wat hy teen Tyrell Biggs tentoongestel het.
I give Pierre a very, very big chance. I don't think I would have put him in if I didn't think he had a chance to win the title. I mean, he's dedicated. I've always had faith in Coetzer. And more than people believe, he's become a true professional in every sense of the word. And he's trained very hard for this fight. You know, I know Damiani's a good fighter. I know that he's undefeated and he's a world champion. He definitely deserves respect. But I'm sure Damiani will find out he'll have a fight of his life on his hands.
Hierdie veteraan-afrigter is ook deeglik bewus van die feit dat dit akkurate, uitgesoekte houe was wat die ondergang van Johnny Deploy beteken het, toe die Kensington seun teen Damiani in Sicilië geveg het. Maar wat dink Coetzer van sy kanse?
Wel, ek dink my kans is baie goed teen Damiani. Ons oefen baie lank vir hierdie geveg. Ons het verlede jaar September het ek my laaste geveg gehad en na daai geveg het ons voorberei vir Damiani. Toe die geveg afgestel is in November maand, het ons aangeoefen, ons nie opgehou nie, ek het vir 'n week lank het ek afgelê en sedertdien het ek nog aan mekaar geoefen. Ek dink my kans is baie goed in die sin Damiani is 'n baie goeie bokser, hy slaan baie hard, hy is baie sterk. Maar ek glo nie dat Damiani sy houe gaan die nodige effek en uitwerking op my hê om my af te slaan nie. En ek glo dat daai geveg sal nie 12 rondes duur nie. Hoekom ek so sê, ek is baie fiks en ek glo Damiani gaan net so fiks wees vir sy geveg, maar ek glo dat Damiani sal nie die einde van die 12de ronde sien nie.
Uiteraard moet Damiani, wat onoorwonne is na 25 gevegte, as die gunsteling beskou word. Albei manne is hoofsaaklik regop boksers en besit die vermoë om straf te verduur. Maar die feit bly staan Damiani is nog net 1 keer in sy loopbaan platgeslaan. Met dit in gedagte is dit ook so dat Coetzer sy beste lewer wanneer hy met die rug teen die muur is en daar is kenners wat meen dat hy meer as 'n 50% kans het om hier te wen.
Look, we all know Damiani is a very strong fighter. He's got a very dangerous left hook. He's actually very fast, even if he's a little bit overweight. And I feel Pierre is in for one of the hell of a fight. It all obviously depends on Pierre's strength and fitness, and if he can take Damiani left hook. If Pierre can take Damiani left hook, I believe Pierre will win the fight.
Het is jammer dat Coetzer so lanklaas geboks het. Ek glo dat Alan Tawil weet op die stadium wat hy verwag van Coetzer en hoe lyk Damiani. Hy het al seker studies van hom gemaak. Maar ek is bekommerd dat Coetzer 'n bietjie te veel aandag aan 'n linkerhaakhou op sy linkerhaakhou plaas. Te veel klem daarop lê waar ek dink sy sterkpunte moet wees aan sy lang linker en sy lang reguit regterhand. En ek dink Damiani is meer beweeglik as Coetzer, as ek nou moet onthou hoe hy teen Duploy geboks het. En Coetzer boks vir my bietjie platvoet deesdae. As hy daardie dingetjies kan regstel en ek glo dat hy fiks is vir 12 rondes, kan dit met hom goed gaan.
Well, I expect the first 5 rounds, I think Pierre's going to be under tremendous pressure. I expect Damiani to come out fast and hard at him and try end the fight quickly. I believe if Coetzer can take the pressure and is prepared to take the punishment, I think South Africa is going to have a new heavyweight world champion. But it's going to be one hell of a war. I also say I rate Damiani in the top 3 heavyweights anywhere in the world today. He's never lost. He was a world amateur champion. He got the silver medal in the Olympics. So I think for the first time, Coetzer's coming up against a real world-class fighter.
Om eerlijk te wees, zonder om Pierre te na te komen, ik denk hij gaan definitief moeilijkheid krijgen. Want zoals ik Pierre in de laatste tijd opgehouden heb, het Pierre niet meer ontspannen nie. Hij is geneigd om een beetje straf te verduren. Hij bokst ook niet meer zoals ik hem ken.
Nou, Pierre's kans is baie goed. Mits hy nie vir Damiani onderskat nie, soos wat ons gedoen het nie. Die raad wat ek aan hom kan gee is dat hy moet lang linkers gebruik en die geveg so gou as moontlik klaarmaak. Want soos vir my blyk word Damiani altyd sterker hoe verder die geveg gaan. En ek hoop in my hart dat hy sal wen. Ek het niks teen hom nie. Die mense is onder die indruk dat ons het wrokgevoelens teen mekaar, maar daar bestaan nie so ding nie. En uit my hart hoop ek hy wen.
As hy sy regterhand in werking kan stel, na sy mooi reguit linkerhand wat hy wel het, dink ek hy kan vir Damiani probleme skep.
Pierre is ongelukkig, hy het 'n sterk kaakbeen. Maar dit lyk my as jy hom raak slaan en hy kry seer, dan is hy geneig om 'n bietjie kop te verloor. Hy dink nie. En as Pierre wat dink en doen wat ek hom gesê het, wat ek hom geleer het, dan behoort Pierre die paal te hou, maar na al die jare wonder of hy nog onthou wat ek hom geleer het.
I'll give a chance of 50-50 to both.
You're watching Top Sport with the world of boxing.
Guess who turned up in Moscow for a fight with Giovanni Parisi at the Palace of Peace? Roberto Rubordini, that's who. Yes, the same fella who looked so shop-worn in his fight with Aladdin Stevens in Springs last year. Rubordini lasted exactly 1 round against the hotshot Italian, who has now won 12 fights in a row.
Die Suid-Afrikaanse junior weltergewigkampioen Mika Khumalo het 'n sensasionele oorwinning oor Ramiro Lozano behaal toe hy hom na net 1 minuut en 25 sekondes in die Portugese saal hier in Johannesburg uitgeslaan het. Khumalo het getref met 'n volmaakte linkerhakhou voordat hy nog eers begin sweet het en markeer nou die pas tot by sy aanslag op die WBO-titel.
The compulsory neurological test, which has to be taken by all fighters in California, almost forced the cancellation of this fight between WBC bantamweight champion Raul Perez and Gabi Canizales. Perez twice failed the test before passing in mid-afternoon, only hours before he was scheduled to step into the ring, where he had far less trouble with Canizales than the commission.
Die voormalige stopbokser Moangsai Tipikasin het sy IBF junior vlieggewigtitel die tweede keer suksesvol verdedig toe hy Lee Jong-jae in die derde ronde in Bangkok uitgeslaan het.
An early entrant for the Fight of the Year took place at the Orient Theatre in East London when South African featherweight champion Jackie Gungaluza successfully defended his title against November Chingila in a bruising battle. Both boxers took turns visiting the canvas, but a standing 8 count against Chingila late in the fight could well have influenced the result. Our guest in the hot seat is Mr. Justice E.H. Stafford, the chairman-elect of the South African National Boxing Board of Control. Judge, under your administration, can we expect a different style of administration?
Yes, I believe so. I am a new broom. I believe I am a younger broom. And I have already given instructions, in as much as I can, not having taken the chair yet, to arrange meetings with the various provincial boxing boards and the local boxing boards. We're going to go down to Cape Town, myself and Stan Christodoulou, and then we will go to East London and Port Elizabeth, and thereafter to Bloemfontein and Natal, and lastly to Transvaal. And the idea of the meetings is to spend at least 2 to 3 days in the area, meeting not only the members of the board, but also the promoters and the licensees, and to hear what the problems are, and to then consider what steps should be taken. In that sense, you might say that there will be a different style of administration.
Judge, as you are aware of the number of problems in the border area and the Eastern Province, how do you propose addressing these grievances?
This weekend, in fact, the chairman of the Western Cape Board is meeting with the chairmans of the 2 local boards. And arising out of the report by the chairman of the provincial board, steps will be taken.
Judge, I was wondering whether you plan to make the national board more representative of the majority of licensees, majority of whom happen to be black.
I can reveal at this stage, it's no state secret, that there is legislation before Parliament, a draft, a bill, making provision for the appointment of 2 extra members to the South African National Boxing Board. As much as it is within my power, and I think you must realize that I have not got the final say, I will do everything possible to ensure that the 2 extra members, at least for this year, will be representative of the black people who form the overwhelming majority of the licensees in this country.
On the international front, will the South African Boxing Board of Control attempt to rejoin the world controlling bodies?
Well, Bert, as you know, we have a working relationship with two of the bodies. I am confident in the light of political changes in this country that we could obtain full membership of the two bodies with whom we have a working relationship. Now, you might ask what that means. As I understand it, in practical terms, and for boxing fans, that means that we could have world title fights in the future, in the near future, and even possibly this year in Southern Africa.
Thank you very much. As a result of a fiasco of a fight between James Corbett and Kid McCoy in 1900, the Horton Law was repealed, and from 1900 to 1911, boxing was staged in New York on a club membership basis only. The Frawley Law brought back boxing to the state in 1911 and permitted 10-round no-decision bouts. Perhaps the most important fight held in New York during this period featured the then world heavyweight champion Jess Willard in a no-decision match against Frank Morin at the old Madison Square Garden. But the sport only really began to boom when the Walker Law went into effect in 1920, and Jack Dempsey came to town to defend his world heavyweight title at the Polo Grounds against Louis Angel Firpo. For the next 20 years, New York was the mecca of boxing, and when the second fight between Joe Louis and Max Schmeling was held at the Yankee Stadium in 1938, the eyes of the world were on Manhattan. The advent of television in the 50s had an adverse effect on the sport, and by the 60s, the fight game in New York was in real trouble. The last great champion to be appointed by the New York State Commission was arguably Joe Frazier, who won universal recognition as world heavyweight champion when he knocked out Jimmy Ellis at Madison Square Garden in 1970. And the last great hurrah for boxing in the state came a year later when Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier clashed at the Garden in the fight of the champions. Boxing has been on a downhill slope since then, and who better to tell us why than Jose Torres, former chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission.
I think that what happened at that time was that the casinos began to attract boxing and money. The casino, just like the promoters, they are interested in making profits, and they had much more money to spend and to risk than Madison Square Garden or any promotion Yankee Stadium or any park there. So I think that was the main reason, and that is the main reason why we haven't had top boxing in New York State. However, I think that there are ups and downs. I think that there are forces in New York State trying to see if they can establish gambling in New York. If that happens, you'll see boxing coming back to New York.
Glenn McCrory, the RBF Cruiserweight champion, is finding it increasingly difficult to make the weight limit and may soon return to the heavyweight ranks. McCrory admits he has now reached the stage where he only looks ahead as far as his next fight, which happens to be against USBA champion Jeff Lampkin at the Gateshead Leisure Center on March 22. Among the boxers denied a license by the California Boxing Commission are Bernard Benton and Michael Greer, both well known to South African boxing fans, and former world heavyweight champion Trevor Berbick. The California Commission claims the license had been revoked for medical reasons, but almost without exception, all the boxers suspended are fighting elsewhere. That rare occurrence in boxing, a double knockout, happened in East London last month when a welterweight bout between Zolani Zarinu and Norman Zwelebi was declared a draw in the third round when both boxers were counted out. Both boxers connected simultaneously with left hooks in the third round and fell to the canvas, but Zwelebi managed to pull himself erect at the count of 9, only to fall back to the floor. After counting out both men, referee MC Bandezi declared the fight a draw. March looks like being a championship month for boxing, and there's lots of action coming up. On On March 14th, Brian Mitchell will defend his WBA junior lightweight title against Jackie Beard at Grosseto in Italy. It'll be Mitchell's 10th title defense. On March 25th at Eldorado Park, Jacob Matlala will tackle Seferina Rubia in an international fight.
Op die 29ste Maart kom Jacques Smith in die hoofgeveg in die Portugese saal teen Jake Corolla van Amerika te staan.
On April 4th at Madison Square Garden in New York, former world heavyweight champion Michael Dokes will meet Razor Ruddock in a fight that could have an important bearing on the heavyweight situation.
En op die 9de April 'n geveg in Pretoria waarna ons almal uitsien. Dit is dalk die wrakgeveg tussen Paul Teweel en Charles Oosthuizen en dit beloof aksie van begin tot einde. Well, Bert, that's a pretty full calendar.
Yes, Deon, it certainly is. See you at the fights.
Will do.